because it's easy to form your own opinions and then say to yourself, ah, I've now discovered the truth. Well, no, you haven't. You've just discovered your opinion. It's only when you put it out there and you allow other people to hear it, critique it, challenge it, that then you get to a stage where you think to yourself, oh no, this is weak. I've found out stuff now I didn't know before. And oh, that person ripped me apart because what I believed is actually a load of nonsense. And we all can fall into that trap thinking our opinions are the truth. We're all human, we're all guilty of that. Hence why we need a public square, hence why we need the Lotus Eaters to share these views in the hope that someone may tear it down so we then realize we're wrong. So then we can find out what is correct.
Yeah, absolutely. I have learned and continue to learn so much in in the discussions that we have in the office. I consider myself to be someone who's always trying to learn, even if I'm dead set certain on something. I don't want to be stagnant in that because earlier on this year, I was considering myself a little bit of a libertarian. I was even engaging in a lot of anarcho-capitalist literature, the types of Rothbard, and those guys have some great ideas about some things. But then I suddenly started to bring these conversations and these ideas to discussion with the rest of the office, and they were able to just knock it down without even barely trying because I had just taken certain things for granted
Yeah.
when I was reading that literature. And it just opens your mind to be able to express that. Even something as simple as the YouTube comments. I still check the YouTube comments as much as that can be bad for your mental health to do so if you scroll all the way through every single one of them. But there is always at least one little treasure trove of information or a tidbit here or there, or just a pointer towards something that I may not have been aware of. Because that's something I worry about is when I'm covering something, it's very difficult on a day-to-day basis when you're having to do 3 segments a day, you've got to fit it into 20 minutes. It's very difficult to be able to be as thorough as you would want to be. So I really like the fact that if I've got something wrong, oftentimes in the comments, there might be one person saying, "Oh my God, you're so awful. You've got this tiny little detail of the story wrong. So you're a horrible person. I'll never watch this channel again." But much more often than that, there are very kind and intelligent people in the comments who will go, "Really like this, but you got this wrong. So you might want to look into this." And that's always fantastic because I think as well as the fact that most of the content, all the content we produce is very high quality, we also have a very high quality audience, which is something that I'm really grateful for. The fact that the people that we're talking to, we're not pandering to them. We're trying to have an honest discussion with them.
And I think one of the lessons I learned very early in my life was even if you disagree with someone, even if you think they're wrong, we always have to realize that a broken clock is still right twice a day. So dismissing a message because you don't like the messenger is immature and silly. We have to give people the time and the respect they deserve and listen to their ideas. And then we can dismiss them. But dismissing someone because you already think they're stupid, you already think they're wrong, is just a reflection upon ourselves that we're the stupid one, we're the wrong one for doing that.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that. I was especially guilty of that when I first started. I would describe myself when I first started as maybe fitting within the centrist James Lindsay paradigm, if you know who he is.
Yeah.
And James Lindsay, he's done some great work, and he has done a lot of good work in exposing wokeism and explaining it to a lot of people who wouldn't have understood how to combat it otherwise. But I do think that he and other people like him operate from within what I would call the 2008 paradigm, where if everything could just go back to 2008, then everything would be fine. Anything that doesn't fit within that particular paradigm, I don't like. And because of that, I had got it into my head that that's, what good things were. That's what good society looked like, was 2008. So when I first started, and for instance, I started talking to Rory, our editor, who, being an editor, is mostly behind the scenes. He's appeared on camera once or twice, and he's got a few articles for it. He's mainly pulling the strings behind the scenes. If you notice a spelling mistake in an article, that's because That's because he's missed it. It's not my fault. It's because he missed it. But he was he thought in a very, very different way than the way that I did when I first started. He was even willing to engage with leftist texts and postmodern texts from French thinkers like Foucault and people like that. And he brought such a different perspective to the ideas that I was espousing that at the time I didn't really know how to handle it and was dismissive of it. But the more I've got to know him and become really good friends with him, and the more I've got to listen to the ideas that he talks about, I understand where he's coming from. And there's a lot to be learned from those areas. And I think I'm trying to go beyond typical partisanship. I consider myself very much on the right wing, but that doesn't mean there aren't plenty of ideas from left-wing thinkers and even thinkers who personally, individually, I consider reprehensible. For instance, Foucault himself, there are plenty of rumors out there, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's true, that say that, you know, he was going off and diddling kids.
Yeah, that's in Tunisia, in graveyards, yes.
Yeah, that's obviously a reprehensible thing. I disavow that man. I'm glad he's dead. not to be too cruel, but I'm glad he's dead. But to dismiss every idea that the man ever had is foolhardy, because we have some good ideas and some good analysis of the state of modernity as it exists right now, and some of the things that have caused problems that we're experiencing right now.
Michael Jackson was a great artist. You wouldn't let him babysit your kids. That doesn't stop him being a great artist.
I can listen to Michael Jackson's music all day, and on that basis, I will say, if you ever get the chance, I would recommend watching Razorfist's videos on Michael Jackson, because he presents a lot of evidence to suggest that Michael Jackson was not what the media has made him out to be. And in fact, which is very, very interesting. I still probably wouldn't have let him babysit my kids because he was a weirdo.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if he was a paedophile or not, but the fact he has the label of a paedophile automatically means I wouldn't let him babysit my children, because I wouldn't take that chance. Now, that's me being bigoted, but when it comes to child safety, I'm a bigot.
Absolutely better safe than sorry in that regard. But yeah, so like I say, it's always good to stay open-minded and not to just push aside things. Just because an idea has come from somebody who's your political enemy doesn't mean that the idea in itself doesn't have merit.
Yeah, and on the flip side of that, just because someone who you feel is on your side politically, that doesn't mean you shouldn't challenge their ideas and challenge their thinking, because if we don't do that, then all we're doing then is we're picking sides, and we don't care what our side does. We just want our side to win, and that's not helpful either.
No, and that's one of the things that I found really beneficial to me. What you've just described there is that, you know, if the people that I was working with, if they just saw me as on side, and therefore, you know, who cares what Harry says, even if he's so obviously wrong, we'll just let it slide because he's saying stuff that kind of agrees with the general point that we're trying to make. No, they challenged me whenever I said anything stupid, whenever I've done something wrong. And, you know, I was able to learn a lot through that. And I'd like to think that now, because I've done so much more reading and tried to improve my own knowledge, now if it's a position that I really do feel strongly about and they challenge me on it, I have the intellectual ground to be able to push back against them as well and really engage in an interesting exchange of ideas.